At my sister's birthday party, I proudly revealed the gift. I said, "I've paid 12 months' rent for the apartment you're living in." She threw the envelope away, and she said coldly, "Pick something better and come back in a year." I walked away in humiliation, not knowing that just 20 minutes later, that very room would become the greatest disgrace of our entire family. Before I tell you what happened right then, let me know, where are you watching this video from? And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because the story you're about to hear is not easy to live through, nor to tell. My name is Avery, 31 years old, working as an in-house accountant for a small service company in Boston. After finishing an early shift at 3 p.m., I stopped by my usual craft store to pick up a light blue satin ribbon, Chloe's favorite color, then rushed back to my small apartment in Dorchester. In the cramped kitchen, I carefully wrote each letter in frosting on the red velvet cake we used to eat as kids, my hands trembling slightly from nerves. Today is my younger sister Chloe's birthday. She just turned 24, just graduated college with a major in communications, and I had prepared a special gift. 12 months of prepaid rent for the apartment Chloe is living in Somerville, totaling $21,600, saved up over the past 4 years. I was the one who originally found this apartment for her 4 years ago, when she had just been accepted into college. Back then, our parents, Mr. Ronald and Mrs. Marcia, asked me to help because I had experience negotiating with landlords. During the search, I happened to come across a listing from our old high school teacher, offering a discounted rate. It was in a quiet area, close to the MBTA station, and I helped Chloe sign her first lease. She's lived there ever since. I never said it out loud, but I hoped this gift would help her start an independent life, no longer reliant on our parents. I remembered those childhood evenings when Dad would be gone all week driving an interstate bus route and Mom worked night shifts at a nursing home 40 minutes away. Every burden in the house, meals, laundry, caring for my sister, fell on my shoulders since I was 11. I cooked porridge in place of Mom, tied Chloe's hair, took her to doctor appointments, and grew up in the shadow of being the responsible one, while Chloe was always the pride of the family. Beautiful, open-hearted, easily adored. Every holiday, Chloe's photo hung in the center of the living room, while mine sat tucked away in a drawer. During Chloe's college years, I quietly paid for one semester when our parents said they came up short. No one ever brought it up again. I never asked to be repaid because I believed that love didn't need to be spoken. Last year, I bought my first apartment on a 30-year mortgage, still regularly sending money to help our parents with insurance and roof repairs for the old house. But today, I hoped things would be different when I walked into the birthday party at our parents' home with the homemade cake and envelope in hand. It was the first gift I would ever give Chloe that wasn't out of obligation, but a public, sincere gesture, from sister to sister. But when I arrived, the house was empty, the lights inside all off. Confused, I called Chloe. No answer. I called Mom. The phone rang and rang. Finally, she picked up, her voice indifferent. "Oh, forgot to tell you, your father Ronald, decided to book a hotel downtown for the party. Thought it'd be more elegant. Chloe has so many friends. Everyone's gone." I stood still, hand gripping the cake box. I didn't ask why no one told me. I didn't ask why I was the only one left out. Because deep down, I had known the answer for a long time. I drove quickly from Dorchester to the downtown Boston hotel, still clutching the cake box that had tilted from the bumpy ride, my heart pounding, not sure whether it was worry or a familiar sense of foreboding. It took me almost 15 minutes to find parking, paying a $25 weekend fee, something no one had mentioned. As I entered the lobby, I immediately recognized the soft jazz music coming from the banquet hall on the left, the warm lighting, and the echo of laughter. I adjusted the ribbon on the cake box, smoothed out my wrinkled coat from the long drive, and stepped inside. But the moment I opened the door to the banquet room, I froze. The room was packed. Chloe's friends, relatives from both sides, even an old co-worker I had met once at Thanksgiving. They were all there, except me. No one noticed me first. I stood silently at the doorway for a few seconds, then walked in, forcing a smile. The murmurs quieted slightly. A few eyes glanced at me like I was an uninvited guest. I approached my father, Mr. Ronald, who was standing by the buffet table. He gave me a quick glance, then smirked. "Thought when you came to the house and saw no one, you'd just head back." I froze, barely managing a soft reply. I just called Mom." But he had already turned away, lifted a wineglass, and rejoined the laughing crowd. I looked around. Mom was chatting enthusiastically with some aunts. Chloe stood in the center of the room, glowing in a fitted black dress, laughing with a group of friends. No one noticed that her sister was standing there, holding a homemade cake, hair tousled after the rush to arrive. In that moment, I felt like a stranger crashing someone else's party. No one called my name. No one said, "Oh, you're here." I just stood there, trying to hold in a smile that had long run dry, just like so many other times in my life. I held the cake box and walked slowly along the edge of the dance floor, keeping to myself amid bursts of laughter and expensive cocktail dresses. No one asked if I needed help. I just wanted to find an empty table to place the cake. The one I had woken up early to make, beat the batter by hand, timed each layer of frosting, then wrote the message with a shaky, piping bag. It was red velvet, the cake Chloe used to adore as a child, with real cream cheese frosting and genuine vanilla. As I approached the gift table, Chloe saw me, but instead of joy, her face tightened, like she'd spotted something off-key at her party. She walked over quickly, glanced at the cake wrapped in clear plastic in my hands, then said quietly, but loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Put it off in the corner. Don't make the gift table look messy." I was stunned. One of Chloe's friends squinted at the box and chuckled. I swallowed my words, turned silently, and found a corner table near the entrance, where only a tray of water and leftover napkins sat. I placed the cake there, so gently it didn't make a sound. When I looked up, Chloe had already rejoined her friends, laughing loudly and sharing some amusing story. I stood there for a few seconds, then stepped back, blending into the fringe of the crowd. A middle-aged couple walked past, glanced at the cake box, and whispered, "Probably just something someone grabbed at the supermarket." I heard every word. No one knew I had woken up at 5 a.m., skipped my usual morning coffee to buy fresh ingredients, carefully chose that exact shade of satin blue ribbon, something Chloe used to love as a child, the tiny details no one else remembered. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, pretending to check a message, an old reflex to avoid eye contact with pitying eyes. In that brightly lit, music-filled banquet room, I suddenly felt like I was standing alone in a place utterly foreign, where even those I loved most had chosen not to see me. Just as I was stepping toward the water table, the microphone echoed with my father's voice, Mr. Ronald, full of excitement. "Everyone quiet down a bit. Today's not just Chloe's birthday, it's a special day for our whole family." All eyes turned to the small stage where he stood beside a four-tiered birthday cake, covered in white fondant and gold trim. He wore a fitted black suit, a glossy Bordeaux red tie, champagne glass in one hand, the other casually smoothing his shirt collar in his usual public speaking gesture. I turned, still clutching my phone like an invisible lifeline, the navy dress I'd worn for 3 years, suddenly feeling absurdly worn under the chandelier light. He held up a scratch-off lottery ticket, the kind you buy at the usual Cumberland Farms gas station. "Last week, I decided to try my luck. And guess what? This ticket won $3 million. The room erupted. I went numb. Mr. Ronald threw his head back laughing, stepped to center stage, raised his glass like he was toasting himself. After federal and Massachusetts state taxes, we're left with $1.8 million, and Chloe's birthday gift this year, is a new condo, high-end, secured, right near Back Bay. Chloe screamed, "Oh my God, Dad, are you serious?" and ran up to hug him, her glittering heels clacking sharply on the floor. My mother, Mrs. Marcia, pulled a large envelope from her brown leather purse, held it up like a prop, and said, "We've already placed the deposit. She deserves the best." A relative shouted, "Moving up in the world, Chloe!" Applause burst out. Glasses clinked like a victory anthem. I still stood there, frozen between two buffet tables, the crystal lights spotlighting my bare shoulder in a cruel mimicry of stage light. All these years, I'd heard them complain about money, from car repairs, mom's health insurance, to winter heating bills. They had always asked me to cover it first. Once, I withdrew $3,000 from my emergency fund just to help Dad renew his commercial driver's license so he could keep his job on the interstate bus route. No one ever mentioned it again. And now, they announced a nearly $2 million gift in front of dozens of people, as if they had always had it all. I felt like I had just been erased, not because I wasn't present, but because I had never been counted in the first place. I looked down, my eyes fixed on the white envelope I still held in my hand, my own gift, never even given. After the endless applause, as if they were clapping for their own pride, no one noticed I was still standing there, holding a white envelope slightly creased at the edge. I waited until the room settled down, then stepped forward. My voice was soft, but clear enough. "There's one more gift. For you, from your sister." The room fell slightly quiet. Chloe looked at me, momentarily surprised, not with emotion, but as if she'd just received an extra gift from a late-arriving guest. I held up the envelope, both hands gripping the bottom edge tightly as though afraid it might tear. "I prepaid 12 months' rent for the apartment you're staying in," I said slowly. "I signed the lease in my name, so you won't risk damaging your credit score anymore." Behind those words was everything I'd never told anyone. The birthdays I skipped at work because I couldn't afford to pitch in for gifts, the flight deals I ignored, the Saturday nights spent working overtime at the office that no one ever noticed. All of it, just for one gift. A beginning, for the little sister I believed needed it more than I did. Chloe took the envelope, but didn't open it, only glanced briefly at the handwritten note on the front. Her expression remained unchanged. "Thanks," Chloe said, then looked straight at me. "But if you really want to give something meaningful, maybe choose something better next time. See you later, or next year, maybe." She placed the envelope on the table beside a wine glass, the very table she'd earlier said the cake didn't belong on, then turned and walked back to her group of friends as if nothing had just happened. A faint murmur rose from a few people behind me. A middle-aged man nudged the person beside him and shook his head. Who pays someone else's rent these days? My cheeks burned. None of them knew that. For that gift, I had pushed aside the entire concept of living for nearly 2 years. No vacations, no new clothes, no morning coffees. Only pages of scribbled expense logs, silent overtime shifts, and one single hope, that my little sister could start life without a burden. But now, all those sacrifices had become just one envelope lying on a table, no one even glancing back at it. In that moment, I didn't know if I was cold because the AC was too strong, or because something inside me had begun to collapse. My father, Mr. Ronald, cast a quick glance at the envelope, then muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, "You need to learn how to choose gifts." I didn't reply. I only nodded slightly, then stepped back, my eyes still fixed on the white envelope, not torn, not dirty, just unneeded. I retreated to the drinks table, avoiding everyone's gaze. I stood still, my hands clenched together, as if letting go would cause me to fall apart. The room slowly resumed its party state, glasses clinking, soft jazz drifting, half-true, half-boastful stories floating among relatives dressed in the title of family. I took a deep breath and turned toward the door, hoping to leave before anything worse could happen. But then I heard Chloe's voice behind me, a little louder than usual. "Hey, wait up." I stopped. I turned around, a flicker of hope in my chest. Maybe she was going to apologize, or at least hug me before I left. But in that very moment, Chloe rushed forward without hesitation and smashed the red velvet cake into my face. The cold frosting smeared across my forehead, nose, lips, and hair, dripping down my collar like a verdict without words. I staggered back, stunned, not understanding what had just happened. A chunk of cake hit the floor near my feet, leaving a smear of crimson icing like blood. The room froze. A laugh burst from Chloe's group, followed by a ripple of giggles like an undercurrent. Chloe stood there, shrugged, and said nonchalantly, "Told you not to put ugly cake on the table." I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood still, eyes closed, letting the frosting melt from my eyelids down my cheeks like something too unworthy to wipe away. My mother, Mrs. Marcia, remained seated at a corner table, turning away as if busy checking her phone. Not a single movement, not a word. My father, Mr. Ronald, set his glass down, glanced at me with indifference, and said in a clear, quiet tone, "You need to learn how to choose gifts." And that was that. No one stepped forward. Not a single napkin. Not one apology. Only the cold wooden floor beneath my feet, the cloying sweetness of frosting around my chin, and the slow withdrawal of my heart from the people I once called family. I turned away, not looking at anyone, not wiping my face. The frosting on my eyelids, lips, and collar began to melt, leaving behind a feeling that was both icy and sticky, like a memory you can't scrub off. I walked quickly, then nearly ran out of the banquet room, pushing the thick double doors open with a sharp click that echoed through the carpeted hallway. I didn't head to the elevator, nor to the main lobby. Instead, I pushed open a small door marked "Staff Only," a back corridor I once wandered into by mistake years ago. Inside was a long hallway, dimly lit, quiet, carpet worn thin, still smelling faintly of floor cleaner. At the end was a staff restroom. No fresh flowers, no automatic lights, just a scratched porcelain sink, a metal-framed mirror gone cloudy, and a flickering fluorescent bulb always one beat behind. I leaned on the sink, breathing hard. Looked at myself in the mirror. Face streaked with white frosting, red crumbs smeared like blood, hollow eyes, tangled hair, wrinkled blouse. Nothing like a big sister. Nothing like someone needed. I turned the tap on and washed my face like I was trying to erase the whole evening. Then I sat on the small steel folding chair by the door, back against the cold wall, not opening my phone, not crying, just breathing, slow and deep. In that emptiness, a memory returned with startling clarity. Chloe at 8, crying after being chased by the neighbor's dog. I was 15, still in my school uniform, rushing into the street to shield her from a muscular black Rottweiler, growling, ready to lunge. I shouted, "Why, you stay the hell away from my sister!" The dog stopped. The neighbor came running with the leash, scolding me for overreacting, and our parents said it was just the neighbor's dog. But Chloe clung to my leg, trembling, eyes looking up at me like I was the only person left in the world. That look, I hadn't seen it in years. 20 minutes later, when the phone clock turned to 9:04 p.m., I stood, straightened my hair in the mirror, wiped the last bit of frosting from my ear, smoothed my blouse, as if telling myself, if I can just walk out of here looking normal, that's enough. But just as I reached for my purse to leave, my phone buzzed. Startled, I pulled it out. On the screen, a message from Lana, my 20-year-old cousin who'd been at the party. Just one line. "Hey, someone said Uncle Ronald's lottery ticket has a smudged number. It's not an 8. Looks like a 3. I froze. Read it again. Then again. My hands still wet, water dripping onto the screen. I replied with one word. "Who?" The next message came quickly. "Not sure." He got a call right after the announcement. They said they're checking with UV light. I heard it while near Uncle Eddie's table. Sounds like something's up. I looked up, stared into the mirror. Not because of the frosting this time, but because of a sudden, sharp thought. Not revenge, not hope, but a feeling that the truth might finally be speaking for itself. And maybe, for the first time, I wasn't the only one left to suffer in silence. I squinted through the cracked doorway, seeing my father standing in the middle of the room, still holding the lottery ticket, his face frozen. Uncle Eddie, his younger brother, stepped up, hand out. "Let me take a look." My father hesitated, but with dozens of eyes watching, he had no choice. Eddie pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and held it close to the printed numbers. A heavy silence fell. Then he frowned slightly. "Are you sure that's an 8? Because under this light, it looks more like a 3." Murmurs spread instantly. Chloe stepped forward, snatched the ticket from Eddie, her hands trembling. In a panic, she went straight to Daniel Brooks, a college friend who now worked as a credit officer at a local bank. Daniel took the ticket, turned on his phone light, examined each number under the glare. He frowned, voice firm. "I work with secure documents every day. This is 99% a 3, not an 8. With this number combo, the top prize would be around $500. The room fell into silence. Chloe's smile vanished. Her wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, red liquid spreading like an irreversible stain. My father turned pale, sweat beading on his temples. My mother gasped for breath, clutched his arm, but even she could no longer stand tall, and the guests, who had once clapped so eagerly, now quietly set down their glasses, exchanging uneasy glances. I stood outside, my hand gripping the strap of my purse. I wasn't happy, I wasn't vindicated, I just felt my heart beat slow. As I watched what I'd long known become clear, that shimmering spotlight was never meant for me, and now perhaps it was never truly theirs either. The air in the room seemed vacuumed out. The soft jazz had stopped at some point, leaving only the faint clinks of cutlery on porcelain and the shards of Chloe's shattered wine glass glistening on the floor. My father tightened his tie, his face flushed red. "This is all your fault. You're the one who told me to announce it tonight to impress the relatives." My mother backed away, pale, her voice shaky. "I said to show off after we received the money. You rushed it. Now we've made fools of ourselves." The relatives whispered among themselves. A few quietly stood and left, no longer wanting to face the hosts. Chloe stood frozen in the middle of the room, her lips trembling, eyes rimmed red. She rushed to her parents, clutching their arms, crying, "What about the condo deposit? Who's going to pay for it? This hotel party, tens of thousands. What am I supposed to do now?" My father yanked his arm away, his voice harsh. "Figure it out yourself. You're the one who made me lose face." My mother turned on her too, bitter. "You're always asking for more. This birthday really is cursed." Chloe panicked, pulling out her phone and calling over and over. "Avery? Avery? Where are you? You have to help me. Please." But outside in the hallway, I simply stood there, staring at the sliver of glittering light spilling through the door, my heart weighed down with a cold certainty. I had never belonged here. And maybe I never needed to come back again. I gently pulled the side door shut, leaving behind the chaos unraveling in the banquet hall. The hotel corridor was still, yellow lights stretching across the carpet like a path meant for a single soul. I tightened my grip on the bag and walked slowly, never once looking back. At the lobby, the front desk clerk smiled out of habit, but I only gave a faint nod and headed straight for the revolving door. A late November chill hit my face, carrying with it the damp scent from the Charles River and a faint whiff of baked goods from the 24-hour cafe across the street. The city was still glowing, yellow cabs rolled by, a few drunk patrons stumbled out of nearby bars, car horns echoed in the distance. I pulled my coat tighter, heels clacking on the stone sidewalk, louder than usual in the quiet of my mind. I walked across the small square in front of the hotel, the street lamps casting a pale orange glow on my elongated shadow. Each step took me further from the room where my sister had cried out my name in desperation, but for the first time, I didn't turn around. I reached the parking lot. Rows of cars silent under soft, green neon lights. My hand trembled as I clicked the unlock button. Beep! The headlights flashed. I stood still, one hand on the door handle, staring at my reflection in the window. No more frosting, no more disdainful glances. Just a regular face, tired but no longer bowed. I opened the door, sat down, and took a long breath. The city outside still buzzed, but inside the car it was just me, and the steady, quiet rhythm of my heartbeat, as if this long night finally belonged to me. I sat in the car, hands on the steering wheel, but didn't start the engine. My phone lit up again, 4 missed calls from Chloe, followed by a string of pleading messages. Please pick up. I don't know what to do. I stared at the screen, then silently locked it and placed the phone face down on the passenger seat. For the first time in years, I allowed myself not to answer. Instead, I opened my bag and took out the remaining envelope, the lease agreement for Chloe's apartment, with the landlord's name, Ms. Parker, our old high school teacher. I gave a bitter smile. At least I looked out for her until the very end. Then I pulled out another sheet, my own bank statement, showing that, after years of saving, I still had enough to begin again. I opened the banking app, hovered my finger over the Create Goal Savings button, and typed in, European trip for me. This time, it wasn't a dream for someone else. The car's reflection showed my face in the glass, still weary, but with something new. A quiet steeliness. I turned the key, the engine roared to life, shattering the silence. I steered out of the parking lot, leaving behind the glittering hotel lights like a stage after curtain call. Boston's night stretched out ahead, and for the first time, every mile no longer led me back to family, but toward my own life. Boston's night unfolded beyond the windshield, highway lights smearing into long streaks in the rearview mirror. I returned to my small apartment near Allston, turned off the engine, and sat quietly for a few minutes, breathing deeply. The room, once I opened the door, was just as I'd left it. The compact dining table, bookshelf pressed against the wall, the little cactus on the windowsill. Everything still, a stark contrast to the chaos I had just escaped. I set down my bag, poured a glass of water, and sat at my desk. After a few moments of hesitation, I opened my contacts and called Ms. Parker, the landlord of Chloe's apartment and our former high school teacher. On the other end, a warm, familiar voice. Avery? It's been so long. What's going on, dear? I hesitated, then exhaled and gave her the short version of the evening. The cake smashed into my face, the discarded envelope, and now Chloe's desperate pleas for help. The line was quiet for a few seconds. Then Ms. Parker said gently, You've done more than any sister ever had to. You don't owe anyone anything, Avery. If you want, I can refund the year's rent. I'll take a small loss, but I'd rather know that money goes back to the right hands. Tears welled at the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I simply said, Thank you. I think for the first time I really need to think about myself. Ms. Parker replied, kind and steady, and you deserve to. The call ended. I lowered my head into my hands, exhausted but strangely at peace. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Deposit plus $21,600, Parker Realty. I stared at the screen, then quietly laughed. A laugh no one saw, but that came from deep within. That bank balance no longer stood for sacrifices I made for others. It was a beginning for the days when I would live, and live for myself. While I sat in my small apartment, the desk lamp casting a calm light over my more composed eyes, Chloe's birthday party at the downtown hotel had turned into a public nightmare. Guests quietly left one by one, some whispering on their way out, always showing off, and in the end, My father, Ronald, slumped in his seat, tie askew, unfinished wine glass still in hand. My mother, Marcia, kept scolding him. This is all your fault. Years of building a reputation. Gone. Ronald slammed his palm on the table. And what about you? You're the one who pushed me to indulge the girl. Now who's paying this $30,000 hotel bill? Chloe, mascara smeared across her face, sat on the floor, her phone lighting up again and again with my unanswered messages. She sobbed, screamed, "She'll come back. She always comes back." But this time, there was no answer. 2 days later, news had spread through the family and neighborhood. Ronald's family faked a $3 million lottery win. Turned out it was just $500. The gossip ran wild. At the corner store, at the breakfast diner, even on relatives' Facebook pages. My mother stopped going to church out of shame. My father was so demoralized he called in sick for his bus driving shifts. Chloe was bombarded with calls from the hotel manager demanding payment. In desperation, she tried calling friends from the party, but all she got was avoidance. No one wanted to be linked to a family now infamous for disgrace and deception. And I, still reading accounting reports in my apartment, kept my phone on the table. Silent. Messages from Chloe kept coming, each more desperate than the last. I have nothing left. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Just this once, please help me. I opened each, then locked my screen again, without replying. I understood now that the more I reached out, the more I would be dragged under. And that family, sinking into their own spiral, had become the living proof of what I had just chosen to walk away from. Late at night, my apartment was lit only by the warm glow of the desk lamp near the window. I was organizing paperwork for my upcoming professional course when my phone buzzed again. This time, not a call, but a long string of texts from Chloe. "Sis, I can't come up with the money for the hotel. They're threatening court. None of my friends will lend me anything. People look at me differently now. Please, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Just this once. Help me." Then one longer message, typed in desperation. "Now I finally understand how much you carried for me all those years. When my tuition wasn't paid, when I overspent, when I needed a place to stay. You were always there. And tonight, what did I do to you? I don't even deserve to face you. But please, help me one last time." I stared at the screen for a long time. My heart didn't tighten like before. What came instead was a sharp, quiet clarity. I opened the keyboard and typed slowly. "I will never carry your weight again. If you truly want to change, I can lend you the money for the hotel bill, but you'll repay it monthly, from your own income. And one more condition. You and our parents must attend family counseling. If not, I will treat this message as if I never received it." I reread it once, then hit send. The screen went silent. I set the phone down, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. This was no longer sacrifice. It was a boundary. A final chance, but not at the cost of my life. Outside the window, Boston at night still shimmered. But inside me, for the first time in years, was a quiet kind of darkness, one that finally felt like peace. The next morning, winter sunlight slipped through the curtain slats, casting a stripe of light across the table where my phone still lay untouched. Chloe hadn't messaged again, hadn't called again. Just that last message I'd sent the night before. Now, resting there like a full stop, or maybe a beginning. I pulled on my wool coat and rolled my small suitcase into the middle of the room. There wasn't much in it. A few neatly folded outfits, a notebook, and the course materials for the advanced class I had just enrolled in. This time, the suitcase wasn't packed for someone else, but for me. Before closing the door to my apartment, I glanced around. The room was still modest, but this morning it felt different. A starting point, not a place I crawled back to every time my family summoned me. I stepped out into the street, the Boston winter air biting and sharp, my breath forming pale smoke. The corner cafe was already busy, the ding of the streetcar bell echoing past. I stopped by a stationery store and bought a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote 3 lines: European trip, goal savings. Course, next month. Live for myself. My phone buzzed with a bank notification: savings account, European trip, for me, created. I smiled faintly, held the notebook in hand, and walked into the crowd. I wasn't heading anywhere just yet, but for the first time, every step on this stone-paved sidewalk felt weightless. Instead of dragging me down, each step seemed to open a door. And for the first time in my life, I realized my silence wasn't surrender anymore. It was freedom. Before we end, I want to ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you go back and help Chloe one last time? Or would you choose silence to protect yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your answer might just help someone out there going through the same thing. And if this story reminded you of yourself, in moments of being overlooked, in sacrifices no one noticed, don't forget to hit like so YouTube knows that stories about boundaries, justice, and healing are worth spreading. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe now so you don't miss the next story, one that might just change how you see yourself and what family really means.